Welcome to Breaking the Silence, Chester County. I am your host, Amelia Rayburn-Pazika, and I am happy to be back live in the studio today with our monthly episode of Same Song, Different Tune. As always, listener discretion is advised as we will be discussing potentially re-traumatizing topics related to domestic violence today. Abuse is a lot like a jazz standard. Familiar, yet constantly shifting. Each abuser interprets it differently, creating new variations of the same underlying melody of power and control. Sometimes you don't even recognize it until it's been playing for a while. Now, many families across Chester County are in the midst of back-to-school season, a time that makes me feel somehow very melancholy, but also can be nostalgic and sentimental. So in that, today's song is how I've been feeling this week, in a sentimental mood, originally composed by the great Duke Ellington. And alongside this song, we will be talking today about a hugely popular concept discussed often in domestic violence prevention and education, the cycle of abuse. In 1979, psychologist Dr. Lenore Walker published research based on interviews with more than 1,500 women who had experienced domestic violence. And through those conversations, she identified a recurring pattern that many survivors described: periods of growing tension, abusive escalations, reconciliation, and then a relative calm. Now, while advocates today acknowledge that no single model can capture every survivor's experience, Lenore Walker's work was groundbreaking because it helped shift the conversation away from asking questions like, why doesn't the survivor leave? And toward understanding the more complex patterns that often keep people trapped in abusive relationships. Now, before we unpack this concept further, here is Duke Ellington featuring John Coltrane with In a Sentimental Mood. You are listening to Breaking the Silence, Chester County, and I'm Amelia Rayburn Pazika, the Chief Education Director at the Domestic Violence Center of Chester County. Today we are talking about the cycle of abuse, a framework that describes 4 phases that many survivors identify in abusive relationships: tension building, the abusive incident, reconciliation, and calm. Not every survivor experiences these phases in the same way, and not every abusive relationship follows this pattern. But for many people, these stages might feel surprisingly familiar. Let's start with the first phase, tension building. One of the biggest misconceptions about domestic violence is that abuse comes out of nowhere. However, many survivors describe being able to sense that something was changing long before the abusive incident occurred. During this tension-building stage, the abusive person might become increasingly irritable, impatient, critical, unpredictable, and the mood in the home might become tense. Survivors will often describe this feeling we've talked about on the show before of walking on eggshells. And as the tension builds, many survivors find themselves changing their own behavior to avoid the conflict. They might find themselves monitoring the abusive person's moods, avoiding certain subjects, apologizing more often, or just trying harder and harder to keep the peace. Unfortunately, though, in the cycle of abuse, eventually that tension-building phase reaches a breaking point, and it moves into what Lenore Walker called the incident phase. This is the abusive event itself. Now, for some survivors, this might mean an escalation to physical violence and assault. But this explosive incident phase can also include verbal attacks, humiliation, threats, intimidation, destruction of property, financial or emotional abuse, stalking behavior, so on. It's also important to understand that abuse during these incidents tends to escalate over time. In some relationships, these escalatory incidents become more frequent, right? The cycle moves faster. In others, these incidents become more dangerous or violent as the cycle continues. And when people think about domestic violence, the incident phase is primarily what they picture. But what happens after that escalation, that incident of abuse, during the next 2 phases is a huge factor in why abusive relationships can be so difficult to leave and to understand from the outside looking in. And before we get to these next 2 phases, let's listen to my favorite, Ella Fitzgerald, with In a Sentimental Mood here on WCAG.
In a sentimental mood, I can see the stars come through my room, while your loving attitude is like a flame that lights the gloom on the wings of every kiss. Drifts the melody so strange and sweet in this sentimental bliss. You make my paradise complete. Rose petals seem to fall. It's all like a dream to call you mine. My heart's a lighter thing since you made this night a thing divine. In a sentimental mood, I'm within a world so heavenly, for I never dreamt that you'd be loving sentimental me. Dee 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 dee. so heavenly, for I never dreamt that you'd be loving sentimental me.
Welcome back to Breaking the Silence, Chester County. Same song, different tune here on WCHE. Today we are listening to In a Sentimental Mood while unpacking the cycle of abuse. We discussed already the first two phases in the cycle of abuse, tension building and then the abusive incident. Now, after an escalation to an abusive incident, many people assume that the relationship should immediately end. And they often ask, why wouldn't they leave after that? But the reality is often much more complicated, and the next two phases of this cycle can explain that a bit more. So the third phase in the cycle of abuse is often called reconciliation. In this phase, an abuser may apologize, express remorse, promise to change, buy gifts, become unusually affectionate, or insist that these abusive behaviors will never happen again. They might sound really sincere. Sometimes they come in with the excuses. They blame stress, alcohol, work problems, financial pressure, childhood trauma, even the survivor's behavior. You might hear statements like, I didn't mean that, or that's not really who I am. And for many survivors, this period can be extremely confusing. The person who was frightening and abusive just days or hours ago suddenly is caring, loving, deeply sorry. And that carries on into the fourth, which is often called the calm phase. Now, during this stage, things start to appear normal again, maybe even really good. The arguments decrease. The relationship feels peaceful for some time. The abusive person might be more attentive, loving, generous, supportive. In fact, many survivors describe this phase as feeling even better than the relationship was before the abuse occurred. And many survivors genuinely believe that things will change or have changed because they're seeing behaviors during this phase that support that belief. Unfortunately, over time, the tension will begin to build again, and the cycle will repeat itself. Now, many advocates also note that as abusive relationships continue, the periods of reconciliation and calm become shorter, and the abuse becomes more frequent. You are listening to Breaking the Silence, Chester County. Same song, different tune here on WCHE. Here is Roberta Flack with a funky version of In a Sentimental Mood to take us to the break.
In a sentimental mood, I'm within a world so heavenly, and I never dreamt that you'd be loving me, my paradise complete. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
We are back with Breaking the Silence, Chester County, same song, different tune on WCHE, and today we are talking about the cycle of abuse and listening to different versions of In a Sentimental Mood. Now, while the concept of the cycle of abuse has been extremely influential within the movement against domestic violence, as well as a really helpful educational tool, many advocates today are careful to point out that it does not describe every survivor's experience. Now, yes, some survivors learn about the cycle and the 4 phases and they immediately recognize them. That's exactly what happened in my relationship. But there are many others who do not. Some abusive people never apologize. Some never enter into a calm phase. Some will maintain a constant level of intimidation, manipulation, and control without any obvious cycle at all. Others move through the phases so quickly that it's difficult to recognize any of them. And researchers have pointed out that the original model was based on a relatively small group of women in Colorado who volunteered to participate in interviews. In fact, Lenore Walker herself acknowledged that the sample couldn't be used to make any broad generalizations about all survivors. We've also learned so much more since the 1970s about the many factors that affect a survivor's experience of abuse: their culture, their race, their disability status, immigration status, economic levels, geography, access to transportation, involvement with the legal system, concerns for children. These can all shape how abuse is experienced and how difficult it can be to seek or even access help. Some people might recognize more aspects of what is called the narcissistic abuse cycle. They experience periods of idealization, devaluation, and repeated attempts to pull them back into the relationship or just complete abandonment by the partner. And others might relate more strongly to a tool we call the power and control wheel. We use this a lot at DVCCC. It focuses on the different tactics that are used in abusive relationships to maintain power and control, as well as the social, cultural, and systemic influences on abuse, rather than specific stages that occur over time. There's even broader work that examines violence across an individual's entire lifespan. It's called the lifetime spiral of gender violence. And it looks at how, for example, girls and women might experience different forms of violence from before birth through into childhood and adolescence, and even into adulthood and older adulthood, which helps us understand that domestic violence exists within these larger patterns of oppression and victimization that occur across individuals' lifetime. The most important thing isn't determining which model fits perfectly for everyone, but instead recognizing that abuse is rarely a one-time incident. It is a pattern of behaviors. And while the cycle of abuse as a pattern might not capture every survivor's story, it did give us the language when we started this movement over 50 years ago to begin talking about the patterns. Now here is Glenn Miller with a big band version of In a Sentimental Mood. If any part of today's conversation felt familiar to you, or if you recognized your own relationship in the cycle of abuse, the feelings of tension, the apologies, the promises that things will change, please know that you are not alone. Abuse can be difficult to recognize when you're living through it, and many survivors spend months or years questioning their experiences, minimizing what happened, or hoping that things will get better. And if that's where you are today, I want you to know that support is available. At DVCCC, we offer support groups where survivors can connect with others who understand what they've been through, as well as individual counseling services to provide you a safe space to explore your experiences, strengthen your support system, and consider your options without judgment or pressure. Whether you're ready to make that change, just looking for information, or trying to make sense of what you're experiencing, DVCCC is here to help. You can call our toll-free hotline anytime, day or night, including weekends and holidays, at 1-888-711-6270. Are you looking for ways to give back or get involved with the Domestic Violence Center? Well, this fall, we have so many opportunities for you. From September's month-long Dine Out for Charity events at Sedona Tap House in both Phoenixville and Westchester, stage shows at Salt Performing Arts, a designer bag bingo event, movie night at the Colonial Theater, and so much more. You can learn more and get involved now at www.dvccpa.org/upcoming-events. As always, I want to thank our friends at WCHE for helping us break the silence, and for you all at home or on the go for listening, supporting, and being open to learning more about the difficult issues impacting our community. We're going to close today with a very cool version of In a Sentimental Mood. This is Django Reinhardt and Stephanie Grappelli here on WCHE.